Surah 101. This surah is a fragment or collection of fragments, verse 1 through 4, were probably an explanation of the word al-Arya, which occurs in verse 4 of 69. Whether verses 5 and 6 originally formed part of the passage is doubtful. They may have been added later, or they may have been removed from Surah 69, being replaced by what now stands there at verse 19, which though longer is similar in construction, and since this, verse 7 and 8, are certainly of the nature of a gloss to the word Hawiyah, verse 8, whether added by Muhammad himself or by a latter hand, may be left undecided. Well, Bede Fetcher, Noldek, Festschrift, page 33, Torrey Brown, Oriental Studies, page 464, because they're, rather than why does everybody agree on that passage, whether they're from one area or not, or whether they went elsewhere, or when they wrote their manuscript. But in other passages, such explanations have been added by Muhammad himself, though in some cases may be doubtful as to whether they correspond to the original use of the word, like 83:8 and 1986 to 90:12. Also, the explanation of al-Arya given here with the sense implied in 69, verse 4. Surat al-Arya, chapter the striking. The striking, Vidnoches Dek Weitschrift, page 33, Torrey Brown, Oriental Studies, page 464. And okay, so the striking is compared to, the undecided. Okay, the striking is compared to Surah 69, verse 4. The crumbled to a soft heap, the carded wool, the heavy balances whose deeds weigh down the scales in his favor. Balances are light, whose good deeds not counterbalance as evil ones. There's probably no reference here to the use of false balances. Childless, a phrase impairing the man will perish. His mother shall be Hawiyah. The added explanation takes Hawiyah as a designation for hell. And 102, this surah is a little bit more than a fragment. Whether it is a unity might be questioned as the rhyme changes after verse 2, but more probably the break would occur at verse 5, with which what follows might be regarded as a substitute for 3 and 4, but would be difficult to support these possibilities with sufficient evidence. The surah is hardly early and suggests a rather early Medinan date. Surat At-Takathur, chapter of emulation. Okay, 8 verses. Emulation, as in rivalry with one another in wealth, and perhaps the number and strength of your clans. The tombs, until you die, to the more accepted explanation that so biased to the numbers that they visit the tombs and count the dead. And the knowledge of certainty, so probably death, if you knew as you know at death, or the phrases might simply mean with certain knowledge, with a sure eye, and or acts about the pleasant, what you count as the good life, or the pleasant place, in contrast to the hot place. Of course, actually, it's generally thought as your acts about your pleasures in life. Were they good deeds, or, did you rejoice in what was good, or did you rejoice in, well, there's different ways to phrase it, but anyways, Surah 103, a mere fragment, probably not a unity, verse 1 and 2 form of saying, this designed for repetition, probably fairly early Meccan to verse 3 is added. So we have the afternoon, probably not usually as explained, the afternoon prayer, but a sense of the day itself, which corresponds to statements which follows. The danger of loss, man's conduct is such that it will be a loss in the judgment to follow. and they counseled each other to hold the truth and endure patiently. Surah 90, verse 17. The last verse is a long, the phraseology fairly late, and the form except is frequently used in the sense of an addition. Ibn Masud is said to have read the surah thus: by the afternoon, verily, we created man for loss, and verily he is in it until the end of time, except those who believed and counseled each other to piety and counseled each other to endurance. So they're listed at 4 verses there. Something original may have been in verse 3. Also, Ibn Kathum's reading Jeffrey materials, page 111, 312. Surah 94, verses 1 to 4, form a short attack upon those who found fault and jeered at Muhammad's followers. An additional charge against them is the hoarding of wealth. The passage, though not very early, is probably Meccan. These people are to be cast into al-khutma. The word was apparently not well understood, hence 5 through 9, or in explanation of it. That's not really about it. But Surat al-Hamza, chapter of the maligner, so, counts over the wealth, the hoards it as a precaution against calamity, and the pillars of the fire closing in, the long drawn tongues of flame. 105, this short piece probably refers to an expedition of Abraha, the Abyssinian viceroy of Yemen, against Mecca, the story of which must have assumed the legendary form by the time the surah was composed. That historical fact underlies it. There is no reason to doubt. See Father in E.I. Art Abraha. This passage is of the nature of an encouragement to the Prophet at the time of depression. It's probably not quite early. The closest parallel to the situation would perhaps be in the time of the Quraysh advance against Medina, either before Uhud or before the day of the trench. But both of these are probably too late. The depression may simply have been caused by the failure of the Prophet's work in Mecca. The closest parallel to the passage in the Qur'an is 89:5, which confirms this. It is very probable that this address is to the Meccan hearer, and the passage is an appeal to his sense of gratitude, though it is a possibility. Surat al-Fil, chapter of the elephant. So the elephant is said to have been included in Abraha's expedition, which refused to cross the boundary of the Haram, the sacred territory of Mecca. Muhammad made adroit use of this story at Hudaybiyah, according to Ibn Hisham, page 741. And the scheme going awry, as in it was misguided, and Ababil, Sajil, the meaning of these words, not quite certain.